Hey, welcome back to the David Elstein podcast. I'm, really excited about this guest. Hopefully you know him, Shell Holtz. If you don't know Shell, shame on you. But I'll just give you a little bit of a background on Shell. He's currently the internal communications director at Webcore, which is a commercial contractor in the San Francisco Bay Area. Prior to that, he spent 20 plus years at Holtz Communication Plus Technology. And I was telling Shell before I got on, I think the first time I saw him was in 2007. There was a conference for communicators and fundraisers for Cancer Center, uh, communicators, fundraisers, and I was just blown away by his being an amazing speaker. The same group invited him back a couple years because of that. I've been following his career ever since, and I could spend the whole podcast just telling about his background, but I don't want to do that. I want to talk about what we're here to talk about. So, Shell, first of all, thank you for joining me on this podcast.
My pleasure, David. Thanks for the invitation.
You're welcome. So I could talk to you about so many things. But the reason I invited you on, you had on LinkedIn an article you wrote recently. I'm just going to get down. Anyone can call themselves a communicator. That's a problem. And this is a topic I've thought about for years. I can't be a doctor. A doctor could be a communicator. And so me, it was just more of complaining, but you actually have a solution, which you believe communications professionals should earn certification. Conducted what I call a highly unscientific poll of communicators, most mid-career or later. They had no idea what it was. So I guess, can you first of all explain what certification is? I know there's CMP, SCMP. So what is it and how does one earn it?
Yeah, this is a certification that is offered through the Global Communication Certification Council. This was started by the International Association of Business Communicators, IABC, but the council is in the process of spinning off. It was always the intent that it would be an independent organization, mainly because we would like other associations to adopt this certification. And if it's IABC certification, that's not likely. But if it's just an independent certification organization, any communications organization worldwide might adopt it. Certification is different from accreditation. IABC used to offer accreditation. I'm an accredited business communicator through IABC. It's not offered anymore. We learned that organizations get accredited, people get certified, and a certificate goes along with that certification. The Global Communication Certification Council has gone one step further. Our certifications are ISO compliant. The International Standards Organization standard for certifications is one that has been met for both the CMP and the SCMP, and we think that's important. By the way, I've been serving on the GCCC for the last 2 years and will be starting a new term in July as the vice chair with automatic succession to chair. So I will be leading this organization starting in the middle of, I think, 2027 or 2028. I'm not sure. I would need to check with the powers that be. But I think this is very important. So the CMP is the communication management professional. This is for somebody who is leading a communication function, been around for a few years. The SCMP is the strategic communication management professional. This is for people who've been around longer and are providing counsel to the leaders of their organizations or their clients' organizations.
Great. So I guess, that all makes sense, but how does one earn it? I saw there was a test, but can you explain how one can be?
Sure. Basically, you start off by filling out an application and paying the application fee. And that is reviewed. And if it meets the requirements, then you move on to the test phase. There are resources available to help you prepare for the test, but the test is, I believe, 100 questions. It's a proctored exam. You can do this in a room with a proctor. In real life, you can also do it online, but there is still a proctor there with you. And basically, it's an empirical test. There's no essay questions. There are no gray areas where people have to assume that their knowledge is aligned with yours, and no subjectivity. It's all very objective. It's right or wrong answers, and it assesses your knowledge of the profession under various circumstances to assess whether you are in fact practicing communications at a level that meets that global standard that has been established. So when you have that CMP or that SCMP after your name, that's a sign to people who may want to hire you that you do live up to these global standards for the way that you approach communication, for the tactics that you employ, the strategies that you bring to bear, as well as the codes of ethics that you have committed to adhere to. You mentioned at the outset that anybody can be a communicator. There is no license required. As you mentioned, a doctor has to be licensed in the state where they practice. Same is true of accountants. The same is true of lawyers. The same is true of wastewater engineers, for heaven's sake. Not licensed, but a certification. But anybody can hang out a shingle and say, I'm a communicator, get hired, and employ tactics that may be highly unethical or proven to be ineffective. And how would the person hiring them know? They have a business card that says, I am a professional communicator. We believe that to call yourself a professional communicator, you should be certified. You should have passed the test that basically signals that you have demonstrated that you have that core understanding of what it takes to be a communication professional in today's communication environment.
Okay, that's great. And some people who listen know that I work in board certification for medical boards. And it's interesting when you talked about accreditation and certification. Yes, I've learned the differences between each. We actually have a slide because a lot of people don't know accreditation versus certification. And one thing I've been working on for years is, talking to a lot of physicians, ask them what's certification mean to them? Why do they choose to be certified? So I guess, you give a good reason, I guess, for why companies should hire someone. Why for you, Shell, is important for you to be certified?
Well, I think there are a few reasons. One is to demonstrate to myself that I have the knowledge that is required in order to perform the responsibilities that I have here. Actually, I'm now Senior Director of Communications at Webcor. And
Nice for that.
yeah, that's all right. And, when I took the test, I passed it the first time, but there were still questions I struggled with. And I made notes of those. That was an opportunity for me to go out and beef up my knowledge in those areas. I felt that I was lacking and wanted to get up to speed. So that self-assessment was important. I wanted to join the community of certified communicators, and I wanted to be able to signal to the leaders of this organization and anybody who may be asking if I can come out and speak, that I have the qualifications to perform those responsibilities. So I also definitely want to support the council and be one of those people who has earned this designation.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a similar question, slightly different, but why should I, David Elstein? So I've, busy at work. I have 2 kids. I have a lot going on, and it doesn't seem like it's quote unquote necessary. And I'm sort of scared when you say the questions are hard and you pass. But so what's your pitch to me or other people that I guess are, let's say, mid-career professionals who have been quote unquote fine for 20, 25 years? Why should we go ahead and do it? What's the benefit for me personally?
Well, I would have to spend more time talking to you about your goals and aspirations to be able to peg that directly to you. But in general, I think there are a few things. First of all, there's data that shows that people who hold a certification earn more money on their jobs than people who do not. They get advanced through the ranks more quickly. Now, this could be a chicken and the egg issue. Is it because you have the knowledge that would earn you the certification that got you there, or is it the certification that got you there? Either way, having that certification symbolizes that you have the skills and the knowledge to perform those activities to communicate most effectively on behalf of your employer or your client that rates that kind of salary, that kind of advancement. It's also just personally satisfying, and for people who wonder if they know all of the things that they should know, if there's just that little nagging doubt that I've got everything that it takes, that under every circumstance I am prepared to communicate on my organization's behalf, sort of wipes out those doubts when you pass that exam. So yeah, there are several reasons, but again, at the end of the day, for me, it comes down to having those letters after your name as a signal to anybody else who's thinking of working with you that this person is well grounded, and I'm not going to have any surprises because they've done something maybe that's unethical, maybe that is just substandard. They used an approach that has been proven to be ineffective. Either they were guessing or they take shortcuts in their jobs. I mean, I've read books by people who proudly proclaim that they don't adhere to the standards of communication in order to get better results. And I think, if the tactics that they brought to bear were ever exposed, that would be a reputational risk to the organization. You don't want that. You want people who are adhering to the standards the same way a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant would.
That's actually a perfect segue because you mentioned knowledge and skills a couple times, and actually, we're going to get on to the thing that I was about to say. So the same thing with doctors, we say there's three things: knowledge, skills, and behavior. So I'm guessing, let's say mid-career, whether you're a doctor, communications, most cases you're going to have the knowledge, most cases you're going to have the skills, but the question is behavior. I know in the article you brought up the whole Blake Lively situation, and just the example right now, does this test for your ethics? Is there a way to, I don't know, say get the bad actors, not act out, but bad actors cannot be certified? Is there some behavior method with this?
Yeah, well, there are ethical questions in the exam for both the CMP and the SCMP. The other thing is, though, that the certification can be revoked if you violate the code of ethics, something that can't happen to somebody who isn't certified. This is the same thing that can happen to a doctor, right? Their license can be revoked. Same thing with accountants and lawyers and even wastewater engineers.
You love that example.
Yeah. The other thing is that, the accreditation that IABC had for decades and decades, you earned it and it was yours as long as you remained a member of IABC. The certification, first of all, you've never had to be a member of IABC to earn the certification, but you have to get recertified. Right now it's on an annual basis. It doesn't mean taking the test, but you have to show that you have done some reading, you've taken some classes, you have spoken at a conference, you have written articles or books, that you have done something to earn the credits to maintain that certification. So basically what it does is it makes you stay on top of your game. And I think that's important as an element of certification as well.
I completely agree. That was actually my next question, but that's perfect because, yes, you don't want someone that could just pass a test and then do another 10, 20 years. So I'm actually, very happy to see that there's continued knowledge because, it's, with any profession, it's changing a lot.
Yeah,
It's all the time with technology, especially, but other ways, it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, even the test gets updated every few years. That's a requirement for the ISO, to maintain that rating with the International Standards Organization. So we're making sure that it's the current state of communications and the current thinking around best practices and best approaches and ethics in the current environment. It's not some static test that was created 25 years ago.
Okay, that brings a good point. So who is writing the questions? Who's determining the quote-unquote standard for communicators?
It is a task force within the GCCC, the Global Communication Certification Council, and the organization that verifies that we are compliant with the ISO standards confirms that the test meets those standards.
Okay, yeah, that's good because sometimes it's all theory but not reality. I mean, I remember my first job. Yeah, you learned this in the books. But this is how it really worked. No, that's good to know. And you said yes, things change, we keep up and everything. So I'm going to just ask you one final question that's slightly different, but sort of talking about things changing. And I've asked this to every guest so far, and probably do it for a while. AI. I mean, we could spend 5 hours probably talking about it. So, AI is definitely affecting us in communications professionals. How do you tell me, a mid career person, what to do versus, if I was right out of college, I'd be worried. The entry level jobs would take me over. So I know this is going to be, I guess, a really broad question. You can answer however you want to about just AI and how it's affecting communicators now and if you see, I don't know, 5 years down the road.
Well, I think if you're a communicator and you're not embracing AI, you'll be obsolete in pretty rapid order. And that's pretty true of any knowledge work that's out there. You're right about entry level. A lot of entry level work is grunt work, and a lot of grunt work is easily performed by the AI models that are available to us today. So one thing that I think managers in communication need to be doing is rethinking the role of entry level. We need entry level people. How else do you find people who are going to progress to those mid-level and senior level positions if they don't start somewhere? But the role is going to be different. So we need to be thinking about that. Also, for people who manage communication functions, I think it's important to be looking at workflows and how all of those connect. If you have an employee and you have done some assessments of what that role requires and now what can be done with AI, and if AI can do something that took a communicator a week and get it done in 2 or 3 hours, what does that do to the other person in the department that has that work handed off to them if it's coming in 2 or 3 hours instead of a week, and they have a workflow as well? All of this needs to be re-engineered, and I think that's really important. I also think, from an ethical standpoint, we have to look at issues like disclosure. When do we disclose that AI was used, and when is it unnecessary? I think there are certainly times when it isn't necessary. It's almost like disclosing that you used a calculator instead of hand, calculating that math equation. Nobody cares as long as it's right. And there are other circumstances where you absolutely should be disclosing. Also, what is ethical use of AI in general? So, I think all of these things need to be examined carefully by communicators, and we need to figure out how we use this to do a better job and also to have more time to do the strategic thinking, the meeting with people, the assessing how communication is working out in the field and spending time out there instead of in the office grinding away. I'll give you my favorite example. And, if people have heard me, they've probably heard this example 15 or 20 times. But we do a monthly email newsletter that's wellness focused. And it always has a nutrition nugget. Now, this was written by somebody in HR who left the company, and for several months, I had to write that. And generative AI came along, and I said, wow, I don't have to spend 2.5 hours researching spaghetti squash. I have better things to do with my time. And you go on LinkedIn, and you read people complaining about stuff written by AI and how it lacks, empathy and lived human experience. I'm sorry, man. 2 paragraphs on the health benefits of spaghetti squash do not require empathy and lived human experience. Most of what we write in corporate communications doesn't require that. It's earnings releases, and it's welcome the new sales VP, and it's these things where if you can get the basic information out there and have AI write the draft that you then edit, if that saves you an hour that you can spend on something that is more strategic or more human focused, then you win. So these are the types of things that we need to be exploring with AI and staying on top of it. I mean, right now I'm probably spending more time in Claude Cowork than I am in one of the chatbots. I created a skill in Claude that allows me to drop a job description in for any position in this company, and it identifies what all of the tasks are that are performed by that job, categorizes them, identifies the ones that are most aligned with potential AI use cases, and then outlines what AI people would use and what the path is to implement that in these jobs. This is going to be helpful in this company. I'm not looking at layoffs in construction. There's too much needing to be out on the job site that an AI currently can't do. We'll see what happens when robots
Right.
arrive. But we are going to have to look at what is the role of a project engineer, what is the role of a project manager when AI can do these aspects of the job. Presumably, a lot of it's going to be more time with the client and more time out on the project and less time sitting in front of a computer screen handling requests for information and change orders.
No, that's great. So many things. Just touch on two things that are completely different. You're talking about the recipes. I remember hearing 20 years ago, if you want people to read your internal newsletter, put a recipe, put a crossword, all these other things. Us communicators, no, we want to know about who's hired or this or that, but they want that. So some things never change.
Make it fun.
And yeah, and you sort of talked about just now, but I also saw, I think that a couple days ago, that you contributed to a LinkedIn feed about whether there should be disclosure if using AI. And I
Depends.
first thought to myself, yeah, we should. And then when I read some more of the comments, and then the person who wrote, who I don't know who it is, but who is ghostwriter. And I mean, is that the same thing? So it got me thinking more and more, because yes, I've God knows how many pieces I've ghostwritten over time, and you purposely don't want it to be known it's ghostwritten.
On the other hand, there was a writer of book reviews for the New York Times who was just recently separated from the New York Times because this person wrote a review, used an outside ghostwriter to do some of it, who used AI that ended up using exactly the same text from another review of the same book in another publication. So, saying that I'm using somebody out here who's using AI might have helped in that situation. But the first time I used AI on the job, it was shortly after ChatGPT was introduced by OpenAI. What was that, 2.5? It was in November of 2022. I had been given a list of bullet points from a SWOT analysis meeting of probably 50 senior leaders in this organization. And there had to be 700 or 800 bullet points there, divided under strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I needed to turn that into a cogent, coherent document that would be used by people in the next meeting. That meant that everything had to be synthesized. I had to eliminate redundancies. I had to make sure that it was all in the same tense, things like that. I was looking at 2 or 3 days of work. And then I went, wait a minute. And I did a copy and paste of each set of bullets from strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I just basically gave it that instruction, right? Synthesize these, eliminate redundancies, categorize them, make sure there's parallel construction in the grammar. And it did a great job. I still had to edit. I still had to revise some headings and move some things around, and there was still some duplication, but I had the whole thing done in about 4 hours instead of 2 or 3 days. Now, did I need to disclose to the executive vice president who gave that to me that I used AI to do this? I maintain that's the equivalent of using the calculator to crunch numbers. He didn't need to know that, and he wouldn't have cared.
And now I'm hearing now that they might be upset if you didn't use it. I was talking to some other colleagues that say they're required to use AI. What do you mean? If they go to their boss and say, I need more help, I need this or that. Well, have you tried to make it more efficient with AI? And if you don't, you're going to be, that's the first thing it says. So it's almost, if you, I know why you say you don't want to say it, but yeah, it's both ways, but it's interesting.
On the one hand, I like that. I like go to AI and see if it can help you solve your problem. I think that's a good way to get people to start to use it. There are a lot of employees who are resisting this or reluctant to use it across the spectrum of business. On the other hand, this requirement to use AI, I think, is getting out of hand, where you have, I think it's Accenture that is actually looking at keystrokes when you how often you log into AI as a criteria for promotion. And then in the high-tech world, you have this thing called token maxing, where people are just using as many tokens in the code writing tools as they possibly can in order to show that they're high up on the leaderboard so that they won't get in trouble. But what they're doing is they're using this for stuff that they don't need to do just to look good. We used to see this, it was code stuffing, right? The people who actually wrote the code would write extra lines of code that weren't needed just to show how many lines of code they wrote, and aren't I a productive employee? They knew that that's what it took to get ahead. This is not the employee's fault. This is the fault of the people who are setting this as a criteria for performance reviews or promotion or raises or what have you. You need to make sure that they're using it for reasons that actually benefit the organization and doesn't lead them to do this token maxing exercise.
Yeah. Well, it's like a lot of things in life. It's one extreme or the other, and eventually you'll get in the right place. So, no, it's definitely fun to learn this. So, you've been very generous with your time. You don't go back to, so the Global Communication Certification Council, the website is gccouncil.org. And meant for our listeners, check out Holtz.com, HOLTZ. There's Shell's blog that was looking 20 plus years entries, and the one about Vonage versus Skype. So I guess did Skype win on that one? I mean,
they made some for me.
Yeah, so it's good. So I also say I've been following Shell on LinkedIn, God, for who knows how long, 10, 50. I don't even know how long LinkedIn's been around. And one thing I did not mention is that you have been doing podcasts longer than probably anyone. The for immediate release, almost 500 episodes.
Oh, good heavens, no. Well over 12 or 1,300.
Oh,
yeah, we
sorry.
Yeah, there was a point at which, and I'm not going to go into the rationale for this, but we restarted the numbering of the episodes because of some changes in names when we set up the FIR Podcast Network. But yeah, Neville Hobson, my colleague and friend in the UK, he and I started this in early January 2005. There were about 400 podcasts at the time.
That's great. So I definitely invite everyone.
We're recording tomorrow morning, in fact.
What are you going to talk about, if you might ask?
We're talking about how gig workers are now contributing to AI training sets.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
It's Neville's topic.
No, yeah, that's fine. So, once again, Shell, I really appreciate the time. And for new people, make sure you like, subscribe, do everything, because I do this every 3 or 4 weeks. I just talk to people who I just want to have conversations with, learn what they're doing, learn more about the field. So thank you for listening, and thank you, Shell, for your time.
Thank you, David. It was a pleasure.